The most common engines under the hood of the Ford Focus 3 are the old time-tested naturally aspirated engines of 1.6 and 2.0 liters. All 1.6-liter engines for the Ford Focus are equipped with phase shifters. They produce from 85 to 125 horsepower. These are completely normal engines. Yes, they can knock the pistons when cold, both with the skirts and the piston pins, but without serious consequences. The 2-liter naturally aspirated engine is based on the old Mazda LF series engine, but received direct injection. Its fuel injection pump and injectors caused problems during the warranty period. 1.0 Ecoboost, available from the very beginning of sales of the third Focus. The 1.0 Ecoboost engine is a thing in itself that you should not be afraid of. But you shouldn't believe in its high reliability either. If you decide to trust him, then you definitely need to know about his weaknesses. But there is no need to improve the design of this 3-cylinder miracle. 1.6 Ecoboost, the most powerful civilian engine for the Ford Focus 3 is a 1.6-liter turbo petrol engine. Wow, what a mess the engineers made with this engine. Well, they were unable to match the flimsy light alloy cylinder block with the deliberately high operating temperature of this engine, equipped with as many as 3 thermostats. In general, everything led to the fact that it is better to immediately take the 1.6-liter Ecoboost fully rebuilt with more durable cast iron liners. Or, if the original motor is still alive, take all measures to reduce the thermostat temperature. To do this, instead of a passive thermostat, install the original improved one, 2,184,696, with opening at 82 degrees, and both controlled ones are removed in one way or another. They also cool the intake and, without these measures, the 1.6-liter Ecoboost literally warps with inflation of the cylinders and deformation of the crankshaft bed, and there are flushes of the block under the cylinder head gasket. In other words, this engine has to be modified with a file. 1.5 Ecoboost, a 1.5-liter Ecoboost appeared on the restyled Ford Focus. The engineers screwed up this engine. It surprisingly accumulates a puddle of oil in the intake manifold. This is the accumulation of oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system. To solve the problem, you need to change the intake to an improved one, where this oil is simply drained into the crankcase. And during the operation of this engine, Ford engineers decided to update the cylinder block. They had to do this due to a defect in the manufacture of the cylinder block, which led to antifreeze getting into one of the cylinders from the cooling jacket at the junction with the cylinder head gasket. Also, quite a few of these 1.5 Ecoboost engines, with completely minor problems, died due to the destruction of the piston in the second cylinder. It is believed that the destruction occurs due to overheating caused by the peculiarities of the mixture formation of this engine. Be sure to note that none of the mentioned gasoline engines for the Ford Focus 3 have hydraulic compensators. The third-generation diesel Ford Focus is most likely a car imported from Europe. This model was equipped with a 1.6 and 2-liter engine. After restyling, a 1.5-liter engine appeared. All of them are of French origin and have a good reputation. Junior diesel engines with a volume of 1.5 and 1.6 liters are descendants of the DV6 engine, but equipped with 8-valve cylinder heads. The 2-liter is known to Peugeot and Citroën fans as the DW10C. These diesel engines have no inherent weaknesses. Unbelievable but true. Just fill them with normal diesel fuel, change the oil every 10,000 kilometers, and don't forget to replace the timing belt and washers under the injectors. Let's move on to considering automatic transmissions. Here Ford is not distinguished by its flexibility and elegance of solutions. Powershift 6 DCT 250. Ford Focus 3 introduced its fans to pre-selective transmissions. Here they are called Powershift, and the idea is the same as the DSG. The naturally aspirated engines with a displacement of 1.6 and 2.0 liters are powered by a Getrag 6 DCT 250 dry dual-clutch transmission. Gear changes and clutch operation are controlled by an electromechanical unit that controls solenoids and electric motors. And Powershift itself has a bunch of gears, almost like a clockwork mechanism. Ford has had a hard time with its Powershift, and she improved it and changed it under warranty and taught her to smoothly shift between first and second gears. As a result, if everything is changed and updated, then you can live with Powershift. Before purchasing a Focus with this transmission, you need to carry out diagnostics using a proprietary scanner and make sure that the latest firmware is installed. In total, there were 6 software updates for Powershift 1.6-liter engines, 7 updates for 2.0-liter engines. Accordingly, in the 10-digit firmware number the last letter is F or E, FV6P7J104JF for 1.6 and FV6P7J104J for 2.0. You also need to interrogate the Powershift transmission control unit. What if it complains about the health of the actuator clutches? The control unit, also known as TCM, has been updated 3 times. On pre-restyling Focus 3 it did not last long, it could leak oil from under the sealing rings. That's why they replaced it as a set with them. By the way, getting to the TCM is quite easy. It is located on the Powershift on top. In fact, you just need to remove the battery. On the restyled Focus 3, the Powershift transmission is already free of many shortcomings. But it has been noticed that the clutch fork drive mechanisms are susceptible to road dirt. As a result, due to impaired mobility of the forks, shocks appear when changing gears, and then they completely fail. Specialists seal the transmission bell. It is better to do this when replacing the clutch or forks. Clutch forks will cost $400. In general, the prices for parts can definitely discourage you from buying a Focus with Powershift. The latest version of the electromechanical control unit, $2,015,846, costs about $1,400. An original clutch kit or from look $820, a kit with clutch forks $910. And it lasts about 120,000 kilometers. It all depends on the operation. It turns out that getting a 2-pedal Focus 3 with the simplest naturally aspirated petrol engines of 1.6 or 2.0 volume is not an easy and expensive task. Quite a few owners of Focus 3 with dry Powershift re-equipped their car, switched to a manual transmission, Powershift 6 DCT450. Diesel Ford Focus was also not available with a hydromechanical automatic transmission. Instead, another pre-selective transmission was offered, Getrag 6 DCT450, also known as MPS6. Here the double clutch is located inside the transmission housing and operates in oil. In general, there are fewer problems with a wet Powershift than with a dry one. However, a wet clutch with friction dust poisons the hydraulics. It also has everyone's favorite damper mechanism, like a dual-mass flywheel. If you bought a Ford with a wet Powershift, then, firstly, change its oil and external filter every 40,000 kilometers. Secondly, watch out for oil leakage along the front cover casing of this transmission. This part, $1,684,808, costs $350. And an oil leak and subsequent play quickly wears out the springs and dual clutch damper guides. And the clutch, for a moment, costs $3,200. But overall, with careful maintenance, a wet Powershift will last quite a long time. Automatic transmission Ford 6F35, GM 6D45. If you dream of a 2-pedal Ford Focus 3 with a reliable classic automatic transmission, then you will have to look for a restyled Focus 3 with a 1.0, 1.5 or 1.6-liter petrol turbo engine. Or a rare pre-restyling one with a 1.6 Ecoboost engine. They are equipped with a 6F15 transmission. This is a familiar automatic, and in a thoroughly modified version. Just change the oil in it every 50,000 kilometers, and there will be no problems. Manual transmission. Ford Focus 3 is equipped with a 5-speed manual transmission. Paired with 1.6-liter naturally aspirated gasoline engines is the old IB5 transmission. Problems with it may begin after a mileage of 200,000 kilometers. It has a weak release bearing, and sometimes there is a howling noise from the front input shaft bearing. It also often flows through the axle seals. Its seals were replaced under warranty back in 2013. Well, if there are difficulties in moving the lever of this gearbox or the gears stop engaging altogether, just spray the cables and gear selector levers with cleaner and lubricant. The 5-speed MTX75 gearbox for other engines and the 6-speed MMT6 for the 2-liter diesel engine usually do not attract attention. However, if you experience a noise from the front that is difficult to find, pay attention to the intermediate shaft bearing, 712,076,410. Ford Focus 3 was equipped with 2 types of steering racks. Versions with the basic aspirated 1.6 are equipped with the old hydraulic rack. To prevent the power steering pump from whining ahead of time and asking for replacement, change the hydraulic fluid at least once every 80,000 kilometers along with its reservoir. The original pump will cost $500 and the tank will cost $40. But there are a lot of substitutes, about $100 for the pump and $20 for the tank. And if this steering rack knocks, then in many cases you can get by tightening the plug nut of its cracker. The bushings in this rack are rather weak, but overall it is completely repairable and can be restored. The same cannot be said about the electric steering rack. To facilitate the rotation of the steered wheels, an electric motor connected to the rack by a toothed belt and a control unit are mounted on the right side of its body. Its entire electronic part is prone to failure. The electric motor itself may die, but it can be replaced from a donor. There are many cases of failure of the control unit board, which sometimes can be repaired by electricians. Also, moisture can enter the mechanism through the seals, which will damage both the electronics and the toothed belt pulley bearings. The electric rack can also tap sluggishly with Caprolon bushings, which can be replaced. Ford Focus 3 suspension is pleasantly resilient and durable. Typically, the stabilizer link requires replacement, and then they can last about 100,000 kilometers or even more. During the warranty period, the support bearings of the front struts were massively changed on this model. They crunch when worn. It is not clear why the quality of these bearings suffered, because they worked well on the Focus 2. They were last updated in 2017, 2,084,212. In general, they last about 150,000 kilometers. Often the source of a front rumble is a worn right engine mount. Front wheel bearings may wear out after a mileage of 150,000 to 200,000 kilometers. The original Ford Focus 3 front control arms can be either steel or aluminum. In the original, their ball joints and silent blocks are not detailed separately. Original lever assemblies cost $175 to $250. There are plenty of substitutes, both steel and aluminum. The ball joint for mounting with 3 screws can be purchased separately. It is produced by literally one spare parts manufacturer. There are many substitutes for the front silent block, but famous non-original manufacturers do not offer the rear silent block with a bracket. The most expensive lever is spring-loaded. The original one will cost $170. There are substitutes 3 times cheaper. Its silent block is sold separately for $10. The lower control arm, even in the original packaging, costs less than $30, and the rear sickle costs $50. Ford Focus 3 is painted with high quality, and the body is well protected from corrosion. The paint chips on the hood and above the windshield do not bloom, but only indicate significant highway mileage. Pay attention to the joints of the front bumper and fenders. The paint may peel off in this area. You can also find a protective film here under warranty. Dealers protected these areas from peeling paint, and before that they repainted the wings. Paint chips may also appear along the rear arches, including at the junction with the bumper and around the plastic trunk molding. The edge of the trunk lid of any Focus version rubs against the bumper on many cars. The paint wears off on the tailgate and can seriously fade. The headlight shades are made of very delicate plastic, so they quickly become sandblasted, become cloudy and scratched even when gently rubbed dry. The headlights may fog up, which was corrected under warranty by drilling drain holes. If the previous owners of the Focus pushed the curves, then cracks may remain on the plastic sill trims. And in mild frontal impacts, in an accident, radiators are very easily damaged. They are located close to the bumper. The engine control unit on the Focus is located on the front left, i.e. behind the bumper and in front of the left wheel arch liner. Almost nothing happens to the ECU if the fender liner and, most importantly, the casing of the control unit itself are intact. It happens that after an accident the casing cracks, but it is installed in place without repair or replacement. In this case, the ECU is quickly exposed to moisture, which gets here both from the road and during washing. As a result, a wide variety of glitches occur, from the ECU firmware crashing to the complete loss of power to the machine. On pre-restyling Ford Focus, another problem related to moisture getting into electronic components was eliminated under warranty. Believe it or not, the fluid from the windshield washer reservoir, which is located on the right side of the front bumper, flowed through wires from the windshield washer pump into the body electronics and fuse box installed behind the glove compartment. If this unit gets wet, the electronic systems will begin to malfunction and shut down randomly. There have been cases of melting of a wet block. Under warranty, both the windshield washer pump and the wiring from it to the body electronics unit were replaced.